You are, correct me if I'm wrong, first generation.
Yes.
So I guess you just get started just wanting to hear more about your backstory and essentially what led you here.
Yeah, so I was living in Chicago at the time, and a couple different things were happening, two different things happening like parallel to each other. So one was living in Chicago and decided to make some dietary changes. And the initial thing that inspired me to make the dietary changes was because I wanted to like lose a little bit of weight. And so I did a Whole30 diet, which is just basically eating whole foods for 30 days and eliminating grains. And you do eliminate dairy on that too. But I think the thing about it is like the focus on the whole foods and cooking from scratch and eliminating processed things and sugar and whatnot. And what started as was like, you know, something that was purely superficial, wanting to lose weight. It like blew my mind how much better I felt, and things that I had totally normalized about my health, like, and thought that it was genetic and thought that it was just like my lot in life and things I was going to deal with forever, like getting sinus infections or like having anxiety. These things just like totally went away, and in such a short period of time, like just such a short period of time of eating the whole foods diet, I noticed such profound health changes that I was like, holy shit, why did like no one ever talk to me about that? And I feel like I like discovered a secret that like somebody, whoever knew about it, like was keeping it a secret, you know? And so it is like a 30-day thing, but I incorporated a lot of the foundational stuff into my diet moving forward. And it totally changed the way that I started cooking and just eating on a regular basis. So that led me to going to the farmer's market the following summer. Like I kind of set an intention. I had a farmer's market just a couple blocks from me. And I kind of set an intention that was like, I'm going to buy everything I can from the farmer's market, and I'm only going to go to the grocery store for like salts. Like I was like very much like, I'm going to get all the vegetables, all the meat. I'm going to cook from that stuff. And that's like what I'm doing this summer. And it was on Sundays, and there was like yoga before at the market opening. And then it literally became like my church. Like I would walk there and I would do yoga, and then I would get like coffee from the coffee vendor, and I would like go home, and then I would grab my dog and my bags, and I would like walk back to get all my groceries. And I just remember having the conversations with the different farmers. And I remember that it just like, I felt really good and healthy before, and I felt like, you know, this eating whole foods, eating this way, like really impacted my health. But then once I actually started shopping at the farmer's market, like it took my health to the next level. And I think it was a combination of like the food being more nutrient dense, one, because there was such a noticeable difference in the taste. But two, it was like having the connection with the person that was growing the food. Like it's a whole like soul connection. Like we're supposed to be that connected to our food. We're supposed to know where our food comes from. It's like it's part of like being human. And so I think it just like, there was that element of it that kind of sent me to another place health-wise. And just having these conversations with farms, I mean, I realized that not every farm at the farmer's market is organic. Not every farm at the farmer's market raises their animals on pasture. You know what I mean? It's like, it taught me all of these different methods of agriculture. And then I kind of was cool because then I got to choose like which one of those I wanted to support and like where I wanted to spend my money and what was important to me, because I've always been like a huge believer that like animal protein is part of a healthy diet. And I've also always like been really into animal welfare, and like the whole like factory farm thing like made me very sad, and like I didn't like that. So I guess whenever I first read regenerative agriculture, and it was at the guy who ended up becoming like my main farmer, who I bought all my meat from, I didn't know what it was. And then he explained it to me, and I was like, oh my God, this is like the perfect mix of like eating animal protein and supporting good animal welfare. And so it made so much sense to me. And I was like, this is like the only meat I want to eat. This is like the only type of meat that I want to put in my body. And then I really never looked back from that point. Like I never went back to the grocery store to buy my protein. even when I would like travel, I was really particular about where, I mean, a lot of times I would like pack meat and bring it with me, but I was like particular about who I would shop with and where I would get it. And then, you know, just learning about like how bullshit the labels are at the grocery store and how that really doesn't matter. And it's just so important to know the person that's producing your food. And so, I went down a huge rabbit hole, just started like listening to a bunch of podcasts and reading books. And I would go to a couple different conferences, and then I would just go visit farms like around Chicago. Like any chance I could, I would drive and I would go visit a farm.
Yeah.
And I just became like very, very interested in it. And so while all of that was happening,
Well, I guess before moving on, what year? So you mentioned that you first started the Whole30. Do you remember what year that was?
probably like 2016, 2015. Yeah, probably 2015, I would say. It's
Okay.
like when I first did the whole first round of that and started like dipping toes in that. And then it probably was like 2017 when I got like really into like regenerative agriculture.
Do you remember the conferences? The conferences you went to?
Yeah, so the first conference was Moses in Wisconsin. It's like the Midwest Organic Sustainable Educational something. I can't remember the exact what it stands for, but that was the first one. And that one, so this is the other part of what was happening, is that my parents inherited a family land that is now Wowdom, that is a farm. It was a farm, but it wasn't farmed by anybody in my family. It was leased out, and they were doing corn and soy rotation, and it was conventionally managed. So I'm learning all this stuff about regenerative agriculture. My parents inherit a farm that my grandfather purchased in the 70s, and they decide they want to move here and live here full time. And so I started kind of being like a bug in their ear, like, well, you know, like conventional ag, like, and then the spraying and like all this. And I'm trying to like, you know, pass on everything I know. And I was like, I think that we could do something really cool where we're producing food in a way that's good for the ecosystem and good for the animals, and also staying right there in the community. Because like corn and soy is just export, you know? So I said, my dad hates to fly. So I said, like, come to this conference and just see what, you know, just see what you think. And he did. They did. They drove from here to Chicago, and then to Chicago, from Chicago to Wisconsin. We drove to the conference. And after like one day, my dad was like, yeah, that's like the future. Like, that's like what food needs to be. That's like what we need to do with the land. And I think like for me, it was, first of all, I never thought I would be a farmer, ever. Like, I still can't believe I'm a farmer. Some days I'm like, well, what point is your breaking point? But anyway, here I am. I'm a farmer. But like, I was not destined to go like, I wasn't so into regenerative agriculture that I wanted to go like buy a farm in the middle of nowhere. It just like all of these pieces fell in place. And because it was like land that my family owned and had owned, and my family generations are from this area, I guess I just felt a sort of like calling to steward it in a way that was really, really right, like by Mother Nature. So I think that's sort of what happened, but it took me a long time to actually make the jump. So like 2017, got into regenerative agriculture, started talking to my parents about like this. And it was a really tough decision because I had a business in Chicago that was newer, but it was doing well and I loved it. And it was a vintage and resale clothing store. But the thing about it is that like, it was a collection of a bunch of different sellers, and we rotated it every month. So every month we swapped out what sellers were in there. So it was a very cool like community sort of store thing that we had going on. And it was really hard for me to walk away from that. So it took years for me to make the decision to make the leap. And I don't know, I just sort of had this like pull, like something just told me I need to be there. I need to be doing this. And I also then, while I was in Chicago, I studied at the Nutritional Therapy Association So that got me more like, okay, food, gave me that educational side, which I already, had learned about and knew, but it was way more in-depth training of how food is affecting us. Um, and then I did it. I was like, I'm doing it. And it worked out perfect because my business partner in Chicago was like, actually, I'm homesick and I want to move back to Seattle, where she was from. So like, it was this beautiful thing that everything aligned. And I remember when I was packing up to come here, I just brought like a suitcase because I wanted to come and start planning. And I still had a couple months lease on my apartment in Chicago. And I planned on going back and packing up and saying bye to my friends and everything. But I just wanted to get here like immediately. And I remember like I'm packing up and my dad's like, I just want you to know, like, there's this thing in Chicago called COVID and I think you should just watch out. And I'm like, okay, yeah, all right, Dad, And then I come here and then like weeks later, COVID happens. And I'm like, holy shit, like my life in Chicago would have been over anyway. My business would have closed, like, and I would have been forced to make the decision. So it was just such a beautiful thing that I made the decision and I wasn't forced to.
Yeah.
It like affirmed it even more that everything happened exactly how it was supposed to happen. And then, I was here and I was like building this thing and outside every day, and there was nothing to even miss about living in a city. So it was like also made the transition to a rural place very, very easy because I felt really fortunate for what I was doing and like the experience that I was having during that time.
Thank you for sharing all that. That's actually why I tell people to go shake the hand that feeds you, because you have no idea where that leads to. Because you went from doing Whole30 to 2 years later at conferences. Like, That's crazy. That's such a fast turnaround time, especially considering, you didn't grow up in this world at all. I'm curious then, at the time when you started going to farmers markets, started doing all this stuff, did any of your friends ever take any interest like you did? Especially once I'm assuming you were sharing food with them too as
Yeah. So like my business partner, she, our store was really close to my apartment. So I would like make us lunch a lot of times. So she kind of got into it a little bit that way. And then my boyfriend at the time also got like super on board with just like getting the meat from the farmer. And that was like our whole thing. I think like the quick turnaround time is honestly just because of how impacted I was health-wise. Like, I think that like I probably wasn't super like, I probably was dealing with a lot of issues that a mass, majority of people deal with. And I just like normalized it and thought that was how I was supposed to feel, like that I was supposed to be tired a lot, or I was supposed to feel depressed, or that anxiety was just normal, or just like the thing with like the sinus infections. Like I thought nothing of it. Like I got sinus infections, I took antibiotics, and that was just like what happened to me like several times a year. And then when it was like all of that went away, it just changed me. Like I was just like, this is the solution. The solution is like how I'm, fueling my body. And it also, of course, like when you feel better, you want to like move more. So then it was like, wanting to exercise more and wanting to be outside more. And all of those things are just super natural to being a human being. But our life, the modern lifestyle that we've created, is the exact opposite of all of that.
Yeah, way opposite.
Yeah.
And then I'm curious, then, do you remember the first day you officially got here and then it was time to start? It definitely during COVID and all that too. I was curious if you remember the very first day.
I'm trying to think, like one of the first things we did was we just started cleaning out like buildings because the buildings hadn't been used, So I remember like cleaning out the barn, which had like really, really, really old hay in it. And then like so many wild animals had bedded in it, and then like we would find like snakes, and we would just find so many things, different skulls. And we were like, well, what do you think this was, And so we would and then we put it all out on the pasture. Yeah, so that was like one of the first things I remember doing.
Now, 5 years later, I'm assuming you're glad you made that decision.
Yeah, I love it here.